Hello, everyone. Welcome to Elevating Your Life. I am so happy to share with you my fantastic guest. We have with us today Beatty Carmichael. He is a peace and alignment expert whose work focuses on helping people reduce internal pressure by identifying and removing unseen frictions that quietly disrupt mental, emotional, and physical well-being. With over a decade of experience and 1,000 plus documented breakthroughs from emotional distress and chronic pain, Beatty is reframing the mental health and medical conversation through the lens of internal misalignment. He has observed a consistent pattern. When internal misalignment is gently addressed, peace often returns naturally without effort, force, or ongoing management. He came from a generation, 7 generations of medical doctors, and was raised with a deep respect for evidence, observation, and results. Although he did not pursue a medical degree himself, he brings a disciplined, data-informed mindset to his work, documenting outcomes and refining a clear, repeatable process centered on restoring internal order rather than treating symptoms. And he is a trusted voice in conversations around stress, emotional well-being, and the limits of effort-based solutions. He has been featured in over 100 television, radio, and podcast interviews worldwide. He also serves as a teacher at one of the largest addiction recovery centers in the US. And he is the author of the book, Outrageous Peace, Why Peace Isn't Emotional and Why It's Never Random. First off, welcome. Welcome, Beatty.
Well, thank you, Paula. I'm very excited about being here.
Oh, so happy to have you. Well, I would love it if you'd like to share any more history and maybe kind of tell us what was that trigger for you to begin writing?
I think in looking back, that trigger was kind of unique. You mentioned I come from 7 generations of doctors, so these are people trying to help others. I ended up going into business. In fact, every one of my generation went into business or something outside of medicine. And over the years, I didn't do anything with any desire to help people. I mean, in from a healing standpoint. But then about 10 years ago, Paula, something just kind of clicked in my heart. I started seeing people that were stuck. They're in anxiety or depression. They have chronic pain, or we were talking before we started recording, addictions and things of that sort. And there seemed to be no solution. The doctors say that it's permanent, it's incurable, and just learn to live with it. And I started to think that there's got to be a better way because my father-in-law, who's now deceased by 20 years, he was an internal medicine doctor for 50 years. And he had great results with most of his patients, but he took a different approach. He would always sit you down. You say, I've got a problem, Dr. Crenshaw. And he would sit you down in his office and he started to describe that health is based on 3 things: mental, physical, and spiritual. And he would start to ask questions and try to identify where the source of your issue was. And then he would design what is the therapy for it. But I think in today's medicine and psychology and the whole health care industry, we have lost sight of the spiritual side, not the religious side, but the side that it's neither mental or physical. So I started to pick up the mantle, if you call it that. I have a scientific brain still from the generations of doctors. And so I started to go out and explore what if and what else could be causing these things. And over the years, I started to formulate this pattern that I started to see as I would start to work with people, and one step led to another. And here I am. I just give you a quick, easy example, Paula. I was talking to an acquaintance of mine. He came up about a month ago and said, Beatty, I've got dealing with heavy anxiety. Can you help me? I said, sure. That's easy to get rid of. Now, he said, well, I went to the doctor a few months back because I've been dealing with it for a year and a half. And he says, well, this is incurable. You're going to have it the rest of your life. Let's get you on meds. So he'd been on meds now for probably maybe 6 months. And I led him through this process that I designed with that I call outrageous peace. And by the end of the day, his anxiety was totally gone and it stayed gone. And so once you start to learn that there's a root that's driving a lot of these things that just never leave, then that's what started to catch my excitement and saying, wow, you can actually help people with this. So that's kind of a short version of how I got here.
I love that. So you tell us more about, okay, so finding out something is just a root of something.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So
Tell us
yeah,
about
let me give you a mental picture because I think this will help. Imagine a three-legged stool. And with three strong legs, that stool is sturdy. You can stand on it, you can jump on it, you can carry a heavy weight, and it's going to hold you. That stool represents us as a being. And there are three primary legs. This is what my father-in-law taught me. You have the mental, the physical, and the spiritual. The spiritual, not being, as I mentioned, it's not religious spiritual, it's that part of you, I'll call it your conscience or that inner self it's neither mental or physical, it's something else. And when one of those legs is weak, then it puts stress on the other two legs. So when the spiritual side of you is weak, this internal alignment, as I'll describe, when it starts to get weak because it's holding on to things that it shouldn't hold on to, then it puts additional stress on the mental and physical legs. And over time, that stress will manifest as anxiety or depression or irritability or constantly blowing up at your loved ones. It can manifest as chronic pain, as allergies, as asthma, addictions on the more further end. And so not every one of these things are tied only to this misalignment on the spiritual side. But I find that many of the times that when we're dealing with things that seem to be persistent and the medical community tries the mental and the physical and the chemical approach and it doesn't resolve it, I'm finding that a lot of times it gets resolved by handling that spiritual side, our conscience, our internal alignment.
yes, and getting that alignment is going to make a difference on what's happening to our body, isn't it? The
It,
pressure
yeah,
physically and
yeah.
because it's all working together.
And that's what people, we've largely lost sight of that third part and the fact that it does work together. I mean, even medical science, I watch this, one of the biggest misalignments. Let me kind of describe what misalignment is. So we all have what I call an inner truth that guides us. A lot of people call it a conscience. It's like we're born with this thing and somewhere deep inside of us that says when we hurt somebody and we do wrong, we feel guilty. And when we do something good for someone else, we feel elated. And it's not necessarily just with other people, but just normal things that we do. And so we know when we do right and we know when we do wrong, generally speaking. So when we do something that our internal alignment, our conscience says that was wrong, and we never release it, but we hold on to it, like we ignore it, we run over it, we just put it out of our mind, then it's holding on to something that it was never designed to hold on to. And that creates an internal stress, a layer of stress internally that starts to cause other issues in our life to start manifesting. And this internal alignment isn't only tied to something I did right or wrong. Sometimes it's pressures that I feel. Maybe it's maybe carrying some pressure that someone else is putting on me, like I'm supposed to live a certain way and I'm trying to be a people pleaser and I'm always walking on pins and needles, so to speak. That just holding on to that will create this misalignment. Or maybe I'm trying to fix something that I can't fix. Like you see some sort of a traumatic accident and it's already gone in the past, and yet you keep reliving it. You need to let it go because I can't fix it. So it's these type of things that when we hold on to things that we need to let go, they create this internal stress. When that happens, peace erodes in our life, and then everything in life starts to either get heavy, it gets dark, it starts to get painful or fearful and anxious, and all these different symptoms that so easy to let go, so easy to undo if you just let go of what's on the inside you've been holding on to that you should have let go earlier. I don't know if that makes sense, but does this
That does, that
ring a bell?
does.
Okay, yeah,
So, Beatty, is it possible that we could be holding on to something and not really realize it?
all the
And if
time.
that's the case,
Yeah.
how do we discover what we're holding on to so that we can release it?
That's the key to outrageous peace. Um, and the simple solution is what I call just a three-step reset tool. And it goes like this. You name it, identify it, and then release it. So what happens a lot of times is like my friend. He'd been dealing with this issue now for a year and a half. And so he named it. I have anxiety. He went to the doctor. The doctor doesn't understand, at least his doctor didn't understand the source. So he says this is permanent because doctors never see anxiety leave. Once it's there, it's always there. So that was all the prognosis he could give my friend. You're going to live with it the rest of your life. Just stick, tough luck and here's some medicine. But once you identify it and you start to recognize, Paula, that it could be a misalignment internally, then you give your mind, you give your conscience, that inner person of you, permission to find the source. So here's what happens a lot of times. We'll do something and we probably just ought to let it go, but we can't let it go. And our inner self is saying, let it go. You can't change it. Just let it go. And you go, no, I'm not going to let it go. Shut up. Like if someone hurts you really bad, a close person, close friend or family member. And so now you hold this bitterness and unforgiveness, and your inner self is saying, just forgive them. It's done with. No, I'm not going to forgive them. Did you see what they did to me? And so what we do is we shut down that inner self and say, be quiet. I'm not going to obey you. So what it does is our inner self just kind of clams up, but it holds on to that stress. Now, you're out in Washington, so you're probably familiar with like a hickory tree. They're all over, but I love outdoors, so this is my little example. A hickory tree, when it's perfectly aligned, it's standing straight up and it has no stress on it. But if you put a little bit of weight on the top of it, like on a rope, then it's going to bend down a little bit. But the longer you keep that weight on it, the more the hickory tree is going to bend all the way over, creating stress. It happens gradually and you don't even notice it, but before long, your tree is bent over. That's this third leg of the stool. When it's warped, it's out of alignment, it's starting to put more and more stress on these other things. So we have to find what is causing that. And I've worked out, this is actually chapter 8 of my book. It's a real short book. It's like a 50-minute read, but chapter 8 is the key. Over the years, I started to see this pattern of how do you allow your inner self to identify the source of that problem and surface it. Because the first thing that's happened is we've shut that inner self down. So we've got to give it a safe place to find it and bring it back up. And so I developed with these people I've been helping just a simple process. I'll call it a non-religious meditative prayer only because it's out loud. And it basically says, I'm dealing with, in this guy's case, I'm dealing with his anxiety. And I give myself permission to find what I'm holding on to that I've not been willing to let go of until now. And then in this guy's case, it came up really quickly. For other people, it may take a day or two. But something surfaced. And what happened with him, to be honest, it was a year and a half ago, his wife had a breast exam and they found some lumps. And he became very afraid. And he couldn't let it go. And so then once that surfaced, then I guided him through a simple process just to let it go. It's not that you forget it, it's not that you ignore it, but that you stop holding on to something that you have no control over. Okay, does that make sense,
Mhm.
Paula? And
Yes,
so we're
yes.
releasing what we can do nothing about from simply by holding on to it internally. And so once he did, by the end of the day, all of his anxiety had just evaporated away. So that's the process. You name it, you give yourself the right and the safe space to start to identify where it is, and then you learn how to simply release it. And I've seen this work with depression. I've seen it work with heaviness, darkness. Some people go through life with just kind of darkness in their life. We have a neighbor in our neighborhood that has a sticker on the back of her car that says, "I run to get the crazies out." Right. And so what she's got this out of balance. She's out of whack internally, right? She's out of peace. Something she's holding on to and it's causing her to be constantly irritable, these crazies. And even when she walks, you can see there's this attitude in her walking that she's not letting go of something. And we can try all we want from the outside to force behavior, discipline, exercise, think right, eat right, do this, and it never solves the problem because the problem is on the inside and it takes no effort to release it. We just have to understand how to.
Yes, I love that. I love that. That is powerful. I mean, and it doesn't mean we don't know it happened. We don't know it, that it's there and we acknowledge that, but we acknowledge it, we realize we can't change it, and we let it go and we move
That's
on
it.
with our life.
That's it. Now, moving on may be like with him, going through the medical procedures, see what's going on, and taking best actions, but it's no longer gripping you and controlling your life. That's the key. When we're out of alignment internally, it's because we're allowing something or lots of things to start gripping us and controlling our lives. And we can't do anything about them. We just need to let them go. So if we go back to that hickory stick, right? That hickory tree. I can put a 5 pound weight on it and it's only going to bend a little bit. But if I put another weight for 5 pounds and then another one and then another one, eventually a lot of little things will bring it down. And that's what happens internally. A lot of times it's not just one thing. For him, it was one thing. But for other people, it may just be a series of little things that we have to give ourselves permission. The chapter 8 of my book, Outrageous Peace, we have to give ourselves permission to freely bring it back up and it will find it, right? It's just like you have a business issue you're trying to work through, something with your radio program, me and my business, and I don't know what the answer is. So I just kind of move aside and keep on going with other things. And then I'm taking a shower a week later, and all of a sudden the full answer, completely developed, hits my head, right? The shower. And what's happened is my subconscious has been working on it. I know what you recognize what I'm talking about. We all have
Yes,
this. The
yes.
subconscious works on it and it takes no effort. That's how this outrageous peace approach works is it takes no effort. You just have to know how can I say, how to program and your internal self and to give it permission to actually go find the solution. Then it surfaces and you go, ah, oh, that's it. I release that, right? And you do it bit by bit and you just see everything shift in your life and all these things that have been problems start to disappear.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I have to ask, how did you come up with the name outrage, the term outrageous peace? I'm thinking it's like peace. And
Yeah, that's it. That's
let it
exactly it.
go.
I was trying to figure out what do I name this because so some people get out of like this lady had a really cool story, and I'm going to get to your answer. But so Susan been dealing with rheumatoid arthritis for 20 years. Doctors had diagnosed her. She's been on medication. This particular day was a wet, cold, balmy day, and she asked if I could help her. And so I guided her in this. And what was holding on in her life was an unforgiveness toward a sister from 20 years ago. You can kind of match now the corresponding time frames. She forgave her sister, and by the next morning, there was no arthritis pain. In fact, she went back to the doctor for her checkup 4 weeks later, and he was surprised. So he retested her, and there was no arthritis in her body because it was all part of this third leg out of whack. So I started to see things like that, and I started to see, whether it's addictions being going, or anxiety, or depression, heaviness, or things like chronic pain. And I said the only word that really fits it is peace. And then I was working with a friend of mine and describing this. He said the name that comes to mind is outrageous peace. And and I knew it was the right name because I typed it in and that name was not taken at .com. So outrageouspeace.com is now where people can get it. But I knew it was the right name when somehow, God or this higher power out there had reserved that name specifically for this purpose.
Oh, it's perfect. It's perfect. Oh my gosh. And Beatty, I can only imagine, dear, and thank you so much for what it's like for you making a difference in so many lives. You're making what a passion you have chosen in your life. And you're a teacher. You help people that are going through drug addiction. Being someone who lost a loved one to that. I mean, I can only imagine what that's like, Beatty.
It is really cool. In fact, can I read you a little thank you note from one of the folks at the?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I
So
love it.
this is really cool. I have actually two books. One, Outrageous Peace is the simple entry into this understanding of the inner self, and it works on lots of things. When I teach at the Addiction Recovery Center, I take them into a deeper version of that, and so I'm actually reading this from that book of mine. But it's all the same. It's all the same swimming pool if you think about that, right? All the same water of how this works. So this is a lady named Catherine, and she's wrote me this thank you note. By the way, this is not an unusual response. When I tested this process at the Addiction Recovery Center, and for your listeners, they house over 500 women. My class is the favorite. I was teaching three classes. I gave everyone the same process and said, go through this. And 87% of the women that went through that process within a month, this was their typical story. So here's what happened with Catherine. She said, I wanted to thank you for this process. It has changed my life. Growing up, my relationship with my mom was really tough. She was abusive, and she and my stepdad would drink and get into lots of fights. By the time I was in seventh grade, she said she didn't want anything to do with me and left. That's when life began spiraling downward. By 16 years old, I was having sex with lots of boys and started getting into drugs. That was just over 10 years ago. Before going through this process, I was addicted to heroin and fentanyl and meth. I had a lot of worry and stress and anxiety. On a scale of 1 to 10, they were probably an 8. I've had constant allergies and sinus headaches for years, migraines 5 out of 7 days a week, and a super heavy feeling like I was carrying around an overweight backpack every day. Life has really been difficult, but going through this process changed everything. Literally, everything is gone. No more sinus issues, all gone. No more headaches and migraines, all gone. No more heaviness, it's all gone. No more anxiety or stress or worries. Literally, on a scale of 1 to 10, they've all gone to 0. Even my addictions have gone down to 0. I don't want drugs anymore. I have no urges for them anymore. And even the thought of any drug disgusts me. It's all gone. What happened with that lady, Paula, is it was all misalignment. And once she was able to just simply release all these things she'd been holding on to for all these years, everything disappeared that she was struggling with. Because it wasn't that she was wrong. It wasn't that she was making bad decisions, though those could be part of it. What was happening internally is that third leg of her stool had just totally collapsed. And so it created all kinds of problems on the other two legs. You put that third leg back up, everything starts to correct itself.
Oh my gosh,
Isn't that amazing?
that's amazing and beautiful. Oh my gosh, that is so awesome, Beatty. Wow. We have about 3 minutes left in the show. If you wouldn't mind sharing your your website for those listening to the radio, and what last message you want to give to everyone today?
Yeah, I think the biggest message is the same message I give to my friends who suffer all the time. Those at the Addiction Recovery Center, my friend with the anxiety, Susan with the arthritis, is a lot of times we live with things that we think I just have to live with. The doctors tell us it's incurable. But what I'm finding is many of those things are simply a misalignment. And by going through the simple process of outrageous peace, of naming it, giving yourself the permission to locate the source, and then releasing that source, I'm seeing about a 90% success rate as people go through this on their own. The chapter 8 is where it's a process that you go through that just, for some reason, it just kind of unlocks all the right doors and the things in your system to allow it the freedom to start to do that. So there's still hope. And if you've given up hope, or if you have loved ones or friends that have given up hope, there's still hope. That's the main message I want to give with Outrageous Peace is, as the subtitle says, it's a practical path to real peace, even when nothing else has worked. And those ladies at the Addiction Recovery Center, they attest to it. They love it. They they go through this. They get all their family going through this because there's all kinds of issues in their families, and it just all disappears. I have to tell one more fun story
Yes,
using the same
yes.
thing. So a friend of mine is very well to do. He was a high level executive, um, and he has 4 or 5 children. His 30-year-old son was the worst relationship. They would, anytime they would get together at family get-togethers, it would always blow up in explosive yelling fights and just rip the whole family apart. And that's been going on since he was 15 years old, since his son was 15. So I was guiding my friend John through how this process works. And he worked with his son on that. And literally within about 2 weeks, all that explosiveness started to disappear. He texted me recently, said, my son is now my best child relationship. I'm starting the process with all my other children. So this can
Oh,
just turn things around in so
yes.
many ways.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for your messages. This has been so inspiring. Oh, baby, I just love it. And I'm going to celebrate
Yes,
outrageous peace.
outrageous
Oh,
pieces.
oh,
And
thank you.
and the best place to get it, go to outrageouspeace.com. Just put the
Thank
.com at the
you.
end of the name because it's
Thank
got some
you.
information there and sends you straight to where you can get it.
Everyone out there, love, hugs, and blessings. Baby, love, hugs, and blessings. Thank you.
Thank you.